Well, welcome to the video. It's been a few weeks since I did a video on music appreciation, and it's because every now and again some new artist will grab my attention and I'll listen to nothing but that artist for maybe weeks on end. So this particular artist, well, there's a second artist I want to mention. I've been listening to Jóhann Jóhannsson. So anybody who's interested in soundtracks, this Icelandic composer who I believed died a couple of years ago prematurely, youngish guy, fantastic ambient style, loads of rumbling, low frequency sounds on his material. And I've also been revisiting this album, this 8-hour magnum opus, is that what they call it? Sleep. So 8 hours of fantastically atmospheric music. So it means I've not got to my list of great albums that have really meant a lot to me. But anyway, just the other day, a couple of friends contacted me and said there's a BBC documentary that you must see, and it's on an artist called Alan Hull. Now, who's Alan Hull, you might mention? Well, some of you will know, of course. But Alan Hull was the lead songwriter and singer. He wasn't the only songwriter, but he was a lead guy in a band called Lindisfarne. Lindisfarne, I believe, are still a going concern today, but their first album was released in 1970. And they were extraordinarily popular in the early to mid 70s and became very famous for their Christmas concerts, more of which I'll talk about. And I thought, well, on my list of albums that have really meant a lot to me, I thought one of the albums I have listed is a Lindisfarne album, but I thought I'd get to it, in due course, maybe in a couple of years' time. But anyway, this superb documentary that had endorsements and appearances by the likes of Peter Gabriel, Elvis Costello, Mark Knopfler, the various members of Lindisfarne, of course, Jimmy Nail, and I'm sure there's another one. Sting's another one. So there's a lot of very famous people have endorsed the songwriting prowess of Alan Hull. So I'm going to talk about Lindisfarne. So why should you listen to Lindisfarne? Now, I really wanted to pick a particular album, but I really can't. But I'm going to own up here is that their peak period was in the early 1970s for the recorded music. As I say, they're a live going concern well into the 2000s. But I openly admit that once it got into the 1980s, I kind of lost a little bit of interest, and I'll explain why in a minute. So what are these albums that Lindisfarne and Alan Hull are renowned for? Well, the first one is their debut. Now, some of you of a particular vintage will remember the singles that came out of particularly the first two albums. But this album here is their debut, Nicely Out of Tune. Now, Lindisfarne's music, for those who don't know them, it's kind of folk rock. Now, if you're familiar with Fairport Convention, there are some echoes of that, although I think these are more melodic, more popular, kind of tuneful songs than Fairport Convention, in my opinion, although, of course, Sandy Denny, when she sang, was amazing for Fairport. But also you have, from the similar period, you've got Pentangle, which had a similar folk rock vein, but more of a jazzy vein in their music. These were folk rock with the emphasis on rock, and there was some blues in here as well. And that all appears on this first album. Now, the famous track that many of you will know is Lady Eleanor, with the album opens up, Lady Eleanor. Now, Lady Eleanor has this very dark atmosphere. It's the opening track on the album. Very dark atmosphere, mandolin, low rumbling bass. Wasn't a hit single, I understand, when it was first released, but was re-released later on the back of another famous track and became a hit single in the UK at least. And then you've got The Road to Kingdom Come, which is more of a bluesy track by Rod Clements, who was the bass player. And then arguably Lindisfarne's best track, Winter Song. Now, I'm a big fan of music from the 70s and 80s, and I'm not so much a fan of lyrics, not of the lyricists. I kind of, it's the overall package that matters to me. So the melody and the dynamics mean a lot as much as they do the lyrics. I know a lot of music critics focus on the lyrics for meaning and so on. But there's two lyricists that really stuck with me from the UK rock scene that emerged in the late 60s, early 70s. First one is Peter Hamill, who is the lead singer and songwriter for Van der Graaf Generator. He's considered to be, I think one of his band members described him at university as having the brain the size of a planet. So he was incredibly clever. You listen to his lyrics and it's like an education. He writes on all sorts of philosophical and religious type stuff, and personal relationships. Absolutely fantastic lyricist. But I don't think he has the heart of the other major songwriter, which is Alan Hull. Because I think Alan, and I think it comes out loud and clear in Winter Song, he has real compassion. So it's no secret that he was a left-wing socialist and a big supporter of socialist campaigns. But he writes brilliantly about the downtrodden and the people who are just trying to get by in life. Now, that's not to say, by the way, that he didn't know how to have a good time, because he's rather famous for that as well, and there's a lot of humour in his music. But Winter Song is fascinating because he talks about gypsies and the homeless tramp, and he talks about it. Winter means a lot where I come from and where Alan comes from, which is the northeast of England, Newcastle. Because up there, I don't live there anymore, I live further south. Up there, you get 4 seasons every year. So winter really means something. You don't get the damp winters that you often get in the south of the UK. You get proper snow and proper frost. So when the winter comes in, it really, really bites. And when you're young, you're using public transport, you're going out walking in the snow and the ice. It really hits home about how impossible it must be to live on the streets under those conditions. But yeah, Winter Song, it's very moving. It's really, really lovely. And then it closes, this first album closes with Clear White Light, which on this documentary, which I heartily recommend on the BBC, the Unthanks sing a cappella those early harmonies on that track. It's really quite beautiful. We Can Swing Together is very famous. I'll say more about that in due course. And then the album, in my view, although great, I think it kind of fades a little bit on side 2. But I'm still going to recommend it. What's the next album? So why isn't that really, I suppose, the album? Why isn't that the one I'm recommending? Because there are 2 others that you've got to hear. This is the other one, the famous one, that Fog on the Tyne. Now, Fog on the Tyne, the track, of course, the title track was a hit single. And it really kind of meant a lot to us Geordies at the time. But its charm was ruined when they re-recorded it with Paul Gascoigne, Gazza, the footballer. Created you might call a party version of it, and it was absolutely lamentable. It's absolutely terrible. But this is a brilliant, brilliant album nevertheless. If you can get by that and your hearing has not been tarnished by Gazza, then you'll recognise here you've got Meet Me on the Corner, All Right on the Night. Meet Me on the Corner is a great single, of course. Rod Clements wrote that one. Was it the biggest single? I think Fog on the Tyne was, but Meet Me on the Corner was very close by. And it's sung by Ray Jackson, who is doesn't have the heart of Alan Hull in his kind of authentic delivery of singing. But he's a very good singer. He sounds like he could be a vocalist in Doctor Hook and the Medicine Show. It's kind of like that mid-Atlantic type voice, but good singer nevertheless. Then you've got All Right on the Night, January Song, which has a beginning that's exactly the same as Fog on the Tyne, so it always kind of winds up audiences when they played it. They thought it was the big hit single, and so on, and a few bluesy numbers on here as well, and then of course it closes with Fog on the Tyne. Is this my original copy? Yeah, it's the original copy that I bought. It wasn't the pink label, it was the Mad Hatter Charisma label. I mentioned that only because I bought a reissue a couple of years ago, which is fantastic. Really, really great. Can't get it anymore though, sadly. And then the third album, Dingley Dale. This is the first album I bought by Lindisfarne, and I bought it because this was considered to be a real disappointment because it didn't really include any hit singles. So it kind of almost sunk without trace, except probably amongst hardcore fans or those who lived in Newcastle. So it was going cheap. So it's the first album I bought from a record shop called JJ Windows in Newcastle, a very famous record and a musical instrument shop. Yeah, great album. And there's an American version. So on this album, of course, Dingley Dale doesn't tell you what tracks are on it. So there's an American version that I picked up secondhand sometime later. This one, Dingley Dale, more appealing cover to the uninitiated. And that's got the track listings on the back. This has, I think arguably, maybe it's because it's the first album that I bought, this is the album that I go back to most often. And it's got a beautiful opening. It's got a medley, and it opens with a medley. All Fall Down, Plankton's Lament, and Bring Down the Government. All Fall Down is kind of I mean, the two tracks. Plankton's Lament, is just an instrumental, but both of those tracks, All Fall Down and Bring Down the Government, were kind of anti-politics. All Fall Down, I think, was about local town planning. And there's a very famous bad guy in the Newcastle area who did some pretty horrible things, or corruption, I think was the deal back in the day. And then you've got the beautiful Poor Old Island, which is another kind of lament on the troubles in Northern Ireland. Don't Ask Me's bluesy, another Rod Clements track as well. Oh No Not Again, not so bad. Wake Up Little Sister, I believe that was earmarked to be a single, and some people say that if that was the single that was released first instead of All Fall Down, this album would have been a hit, but we'll never know. Go Back, Caught in the Act, Mandolin King, and really super atmospheric title track, Dingley Dale, which lasts just over 6 minutes. It's really, really good. So where would you start with Lindisfarne? Well, I'll tell you wouldn't start with any one of those albums. What you would do is you would buy the CD set. Now, I don't normally talk about CDs, mainly because I usually collect vinyl, but, CDs as well, to be truthful. But this is something I bought just a short while ago, maybe a couple of years, which is the Charisma years. All the albums that are released on Charisma, and it's on 4 CDs. And you can see here, you've got the first 3 albums, and then you have a live album, which I've just been playing, and then the first album when they had a split in the group called Roll On Ruby, which is also good. But I don't really want to focus on that now because I want to focus on the first 3 albums. However, I will say one last thing, one album that is definitely worth hearing, and that is Magic in the Air, a double live album recorded at Newcastle City Hall in 1977. Now, it was recorded apparently on Christmas Eve, and I attended, I think, the night before and a couple of nights earlier. And Lindisfarne used to do these Christmas concerts. They usually did a Christmas tour around the UK, and then Christmas concerts at Newcastle City Hall. And it was a real party atmosphere, a real sing-along. It was a fantastic way to have a night out in the run-up to Christmas. It was absolutely fantastic. Great fun. But I avoided this album for years, not just because of its cheesy cover, but because all I remember of those Christmas concerts is that it was almost a ritual that you'd go out and have a few drinks before you'd get there. Sometimes you'd be a bit drunk, and it would be raucous. In the audience, it was raucous. It was a great, great night out, of course. And I thought this album would be just a whole load of audience participation, sing-along. But really, it's not. What you've got here is a band that's on real top form. They're really taking it seriously. So they've mixed down the audience slightly, so they don't dominate. You don't hear them clapping along all the time, for example. And they're a band that's on fire. And one of the things that you notice, particularly I think on these early albums, but this album, is the rhythm section of Ray Laidlaw on drums and Rod Clements on bass are really strong, really beefy. So although they've got this folk rock style and sometimes quite a lot of ballads within their repertoire, this is a real punchy band. And talking of band, I think it was Elvis Costello in the Alan Hull documentary who mentioned that he considered Lindisfarne to be the English version of The Band. Now, those fans of Dylan and the band will of course know the Last Waltz, the big farewell concert that they had where they brought on loads of different guests. Well, Lindisfarne don't bring on guests here, but I think there's a sound on this album that's just like the Last Waltz. That really beefy Rick Danko style bass, really punchy sound, and a band that's really playing it for real. You know that it's like the last gig for the year. So here you've got, really outstanding versions of Lady Eleanor, Road to Kingdom Come, January Song, where you can hear the audience anticipating Fog on the Tyne, and then you can hear the groans from some of them in the mix when the lyrics start for January Song. It does a lovely version of Winter Song. It's, as I've already mentioned, it's a beautiful ballad, quite sparse, but in a live setting it still works remarkably well. Wake Up Little Sister and All Fall Down, which I've mentioned. Meet Me on the Corner. Dingley Dale, it's amazing that they pulled that off as well live. The fourth side is not so good because this is where We Can Swing Together, Fog on the Tyne and Clear White Light come in. We Can Swing Together is a good track, but they had this awful habit, in my judgment, of just extending it for too long. I think there's one version I've got somewhere, it's about 17 minutes long, and it just hangs around too long, so it's not so good. Fog in the Tyne's nice version, Clear White Light's great as well. But yeah, you can pick that up for nothing at second-hand record shops, but it's really good if you like the folk rock genre and you want to discover Lindisfarne or revisit them if you never got around to this album. One minor detail, there on the inside cover, which is absolutely awful by the way, it's got some shots of the crowd. I think there's a picture of me in here. So yeah, just great. I wish I knew it was me. I'm wearing some sort of a Christmas type top, I think. I don't know. But yeah. So yeah, why should you listen to Lindisfarne? Well, I think because you want to experience a bit of folk rock with a bit of beef. You like a bit of Fairport. You like a bit of Pentangle. You are like a bit of balladry, so you like a little bit of singer-songwriter stuff. There's plenty there in here to satisfy in this catalogue to satisfy you as well. And if I remember rightly, I think this cost about £15 or $20 or something if you bought it in the USA. If you can get it these days, I'm not sure if you can still get it, but it's only a couple of years ago when I bought it. But yeah, absolutely fantastic band. And if you get the likes of Elvis Costello and Gabriel and Sting and Knopfler talking about how brilliant songwriter Alan Hull was, you'll know that he was someone to be taken seriously. And in my judgment, one of the greatest bands that have come out of England in my lifetime. And that's not just because I'm from the Northeast. Anyway, that's my little rant, a little explanation of why you should listen to Lindisfarne. I hope you found it interesting, useful. Hope you dig it out if you've already got it, or go and buy it, or listen on Spotify. Do whatever you can. And I'll get round to another music video in due course. So I'll see you then. Thanks a lot. Right, let me add something about why I didn't continue to follow the band throughout the 1980s and beyond. Well, they released an album. I think they had so much success in their Christmas concerts, and they kind of, when they reformed and released this lovely album here, Back and Forth, which has got the gorgeous Run for Home on it, but that's another story. But they released this album, which I think I picked up for £1. Come on, everybody. I think they became a bit of a party band. I mean, this has got, I don't know how many tracks here. I could count them up, but you can see how many tracks are on here. But you got a whole bunch of rock and roll classics, and out of a 2-record set, side 4 is the Lindisfarne hits. But the other ones have got like Let's Dance, Splish Splash, You Never Can Tell, Mr. Bassman, Run Around Sue, Shake, Rattle and Roll, See You Later Alligator, La Bamba, and so on. All kind of good fun. But they'd moved so far from their kind of folk rock roots on this. They're just another pop band of kind of Middle Ages, really. So I kind of lost interest. Now I believe, and I hold my hand up, I've not followed them close enough to know, but I believe they return more to their roots in some of the very later stuff that they did. But I think that kind of was the problem, really. They lost their songwriting spark, or Alan Hull was creaming off some of the best stuff for his solo albums, which are also worth investigating, and they ended up as a party band. But nevertheless, like I've already said, those first 3 albums plus that live album, Magic in the Air, if you start with all those, you'll be in great shape. Excellent band. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you later.